Hi, I'm Marc Andreas. In this video, you'll learn what core transformation is. You will see me guide the group through a group-guided experience of core transformation, and you'll see me do a demonstration with a participant from the group. If you're in a place where you can close your eyes, I recommend you go along for the group-guided experience and comment below your experience of this process. With all of these wonderful change tools that we have, what is it about core transformation that is unique? So with core transformation, our limitations are what become the doorways to profound states of being that we refer to as core states that then transform the limitation. So it's quite a wonderful experience to start with, those things about ourselves that we may wish would just go away or we really don't like. That those can actually be doorways to these profound and wonderful resources through this process. This is a process that can transform any thought, feeling, or behavior. So if you're wanting to learn a new skill, that's something that you're going to actually have to put the work in to learn. You can't just do core transformation and suddenly know how to fly an airplane. But if you're wanting to learn how to fly an airplane, there may be many things that core transformation can transform that will allow you to do that more easily. So, for example, if you find yourself procrastinating on the reading that you have to do, or you find yourself with extreme anxiety every time you get in the cockpit, those are thoughts, feelings, behaviors that can be transformed with this process to allow you to learn a new skill more easily and more effectively. So some examples of the benefits that people have experienced from this process. Intrusive thoughts. So I had a client recently where these intrusive thoughts would come into her experience and she felt like she had no control over them, and they were negative and they got her down and they weren't really directing her in any kind of useful or productive way. If it was up to her, she would have just not had them, right? But it wasn't up to her. She just, she'd be going through her life and these intrusive thoughts would happen again. So we use this process with that as the starting point. And by the end, and after follow-up, she let me know that in the context where those intrusive thoughts used to come in and really bother her and get her down, now there was a totally different experience. And her experience was of being resourceful and tapped into the core experience that I'll be sharing more with you later. So that's an example of transforming an inner thought. It can also be used to transform behaviors, such as one person in a core transformation training that I taught did this process, and I spoke with him months later. He told me that he had quit smoking using this process. Fear and anxiety, an example of a client that I worked with who had an extreme fear and anxiety for many, many years. She had a traumatic experience witnessing a robbery rape situation. So very traumatizing. It was years earlier. And she had all of these this fear and anxiety still triggered in certain contexts. And we did this process over the course of about 3 or 4 sessions, working with different aspects around this. And after that, her experience was transformed. It used to be that she would have to have the lights on when she slept if her husband was out of town. She was able to sleep alone by herself again with the lights off. And she also noticed other areas in her life transforming as well that we didn't work on, which is another wonderful benefit that often comes through this process, is that people notice not only the thing that they focused on transforming, but also these other positive ripple effects in other areas of their lives that they didn't necessarily expect to be transformed as well. Another example, my uncle, who is in sales, many years ago, he did this process with this. He felt this inner conflict because he needed to make a sale to be successful in his business, but at the same time, he didn't want to push anything on somebody that they didn't actually want to buy. So he did this process with this inner conflict, and he got to this wonderful core state, and transformed back through his experience. And at the end of the process, he was in a state of, you know, I could just care less if I make the sale or not. And interestingly, the next year, his sales doubled in one category, and he became Salesman of the Year in another. And what he attributes that to is that from this core state of being, he was able to focus on the person in front of him and what their true needs really were, and be able to sell not just that one time, but to sell something that would really be meeting long-term needs for somebody and create a customer that would be coming back again because they were so satisfied with what they got. There's even an example in the book, Core Transformation, of somebody who used this process with somebody who is diagnosed schizophrenic and worked very dedicatedly, I think it was once a day for a period of time, about a month or so. They chose something to work on each time. And of course, somebody experiencing schizophrenia, there's a lot of division, right? A lot of inner parts. And so they took a specific part each time, worked through. And now there's many years follow-up with this. Well, there already was when the book was written. Now there's much more. But he attributes Core Transformation to getting his life back. He was able to marry, get a stable job, have a family, and lead a normal life again. So that's not to say that this will always work, always be a cure for schizophrenia, but it's quite impressive that for even something that severe, that this can be a process that can transform even somebody with that much inner division in their experience. And this is just a quote from a recent client. CT has changed my life. And I think that really, it encapsulates often what people experience when they take this on as a practice. So more than just doing one session or two sessions on a specific issue, but people who take this on as a practice, whether they're guiding themselves through the process or being guided by somebody else, our experience is that if you stick with it, positive change is inevitable. A quick overview of the 4 concepts that are key to this process. So the first is the idea of parts. This process is based on a parts model. So, and this is something that, everyone has experience of this. You're walking by a shop window and you look in the window and you go, oh, a part of me would just really love to get that. And on the other hand, though, I'd kind of like to save up money, and I could really do to save a bit and have a little bit more of a cushion. Or the waiter comes along and brings this tray of beautiful looking desserts at the end of dinner, and and there might be a part of us that really wants to have that chocolate cake, and another part that goes, oh, I'll really feel better if I don't. Or I'm watching my weight, or I'd really like to do the healthy choice, even though it looks so good. So there's a part of me that really wants to, there's a part of me that doesn't. So in addition to parts, this process uses the unconscious mind. If a client's coming to me with an issue and they say, Mark, I really want to stop nail biting, and it's been a problem for 7 years, and I've always wanted to stop, and I've tried this and that and the other, and I just haven't been able to. So obviously, they're consciously aware of the problem. They consciously want to stop it, and yet they haven't been able to stop it. So anytime we have an experience where consciously we want to change something, and yet our experience is that it hasn't changed yet, we know that that is an unconscious part of us operating or generating that behavior. If I can't consciously will myself to stop biting my nails, then it must be some unconscious part of me that's generating that. Otherwise, I would have just stopped 7 years ago. So the third key concept is positive purpose or positive intent. And this is the assumption that every feeling I have, every thought I have, every behavior that I have is motivated by something positive. It's trying to get something positive. Now, it may not be succeeding at that, but every feeling, every behavior, every thought that every person has is motivated by positive intent. And this alone can be a pretty mind-blowing concept for many people. I've had some clients where we spent the whole first session just on this because it was so revolutionary. You mean, really? This thing that has been causing me so much pain and misery for so many years could actually be wanting something positive for me? That's a major news flash for some people. And then not only is there a positive purpose behind every feeling, behavior, or thought, but there are even deeper purposes. And this process is about discovering those deeper and deeper purposes. So I'll give you an example of a time when I guided myself through this process. And then I'll guide you all through a group guided experience so that you can really have a sense yourself of the beginning of this process. There was a time when I was not taking breaks on my writing. I was doing a lot of writing, and I knew, because basically after writing for several days, my eyes would get so strained and tired that I'd have to take like an entire day off. I just couldn't do it anymore. And so I knew consciously, okay, you know what? This is actually going to allow me to do more writing if I just take a 10-minute break every hour or a 5-minute break. And yet this conscious knowledge wasn't translating into my experience. So I thought, okay, let me explore this process. So I closed my eyes, I imagined stepping into a time when I was there at my computer, typing away, working on my writing. And because this was the behavior of not taking breaks is what I wanted to transform. And when I stepped back into this experience, I just asked on the inside, okay, since I didn't consciously decide to not take breaks, it's as if some unconscious part of me is generating this. So let me just sense in my body around me, where do I sense this part lives? And what came to me as I was reliving the experience, stepping into it, it was like in my chest and arms. Is that what I wrote down there? Yeah, and kind of contracted. Oh, in my stomach, apparently. I don't remember these things exactly. It was somewhere here. And there was this kind of contracted experience. And so I just took a moment to begin by just thanking this part of me here in my chest, stomach area, in this contracted sense. Thanking this part for being here because I could trust that it has something positive at once, even if I don't yet know consciously what that is. And then after thanking this part, I asked this part, what do you want? And then I just relaxed and waited for the response to come back from this part of me. And it came back quite immediately. Get things done. I heard a voice. Okay, and that kind of makes sense at a conscious level too. It doesn't always make sense at a conscious level, but in this case, it did. So, okay, great. So I thanked this part for this response, invited it to step into what it would be like to already get things done. And I asked this part, when you already get things done, when you already have things done, what is it you want through this that's even deeper still, that's even more important? And this time, the answer that came back was in a feeling. And it was this feeling good, this sense of accomplishment. So I thanked this part for this response, invited it to step into what it's like to just feel good, feel this sense of accomplishment, having gotten this done, and asked, when you feel this sense of accomplishment, feel good, what is it you want through having this that's even deeper still? And this time, the answer came in an image for me. And it was, if I was to translate it into words, it would be kind of like meaning in life. But the image that came was kind of this sense of like interconnection with other people and with life. So I thanked this part for this response, invited it to step, breathe into what it's like to already have this meaning in life. And asked, when you have this, what is it you want through having this that's even deeper still? And the answer that came was this, again, it wasn't in words this time. It was like, I felt my heart opening. There was kind of like a warmth. And it was like a love with life, or like passion is the best words I could use to describe it. And So I thank the part for this response, invited it to step into what it's like to have this like passion, love with life. Asked, when you have this, is there anything you want even deeper, even more core through this? And the answer that came was just this sense of this like, it was almost like everything was sort of infused with this rosy kind of hue. That was the experience that came to me. Translated, I would call that love, translated into English. And it was a kind of love that just is, as opposed to like, I want love from my wife, or I would like more love from my wife, or I'd want to give love to my wife. You know, that's a love that's dependent on something. This was a love as a way of being. It just like a state of love as a way of being. It wasn't dependent on any particular person being involved. So I thank this part for this response and just invited it to step into this experience of love, because the wonderful thing is about a core state, and why this is such an incredible resource, is that just purely by definition, love as a way of being doesn't actually need anything to happen first. I don't have to wait for anything else to happen in life in order to experience love as a way of being. This love that just is. And so I invited this part of me to step into what it's like to just already have this love. And how does already having this love as a way of being to begin with just make things different in general? And so isn't that interesting that something as mundane as not taking breaks on the computer could lead to a place like this love as a state of being? That's really what was wanted at the deepest. Who would have guessed that something that profound could be wanted from just not taking breaks at the computer? And yet this is what we find time and time again, no matter what somebody starts with, that it accesses these core states of being. And the good news is that we can actually just step in and have them. Often our inner parts, they think we need to first do certain things, get certain things before we can experience these core states. And so many times we may never experience it going about it in that way, depending on what's in these earlier levels. Some of these may not even be possible in real life, but the core state is always possible. And so that's why it's such a transformative resource. And then the second phase of the process, finding out, okay, so what happens when this part already has love as a way of being? How does this just naturally transform or enrich each of these areas, going back and bringing it back into each of these different areas? And so my experience with this, I would have to sort of make it up now at this point, because I don't remember specifically. But the thing that tends to happen going back through is that it tends to either enrich these areas, make it easier, or make them not even necessary anymore, or some combination of those. So it may make it easier for me to get things done, and at the same time, also not be required. You know, I don't have to wait to experience love. If things aren't done, I can still experience love, even as certain things aren't done. So I'd like to guide you all through a group-guided just experience of the beginning of this process. I invite you to, if you have notes or that sort of thing, to just set them aside for the time being. And invite you to, for this group-guided experience, choose something that is like a mild issue. So this might be some situation that pushes your buttons, but no real harm is done. Most of us can find something along those lines with a loved one or relative or friend or something like that. It could be anything to you that, you know, maybe a mild frustration around something, a mild anxiety or worry. It could just be something that occurred from the day. And this could be some feeling. It could also be inner thought or some habit or behavior. So whatever response you choose that you would like to transform, that's in this mild category, I invite you to Now think about the different times or places where this response has occurred. Just take a few moments to think about the times, places where this feeling, behavior, thought has occurred that you would like to change. And now I invite you to think of a specific time that this response occurred, this response that you'd like to change. And mentally step back into this memory now. So it's like you're back in this memory as it was when it happened. So you're seeing through your eyes, hearing through your ears, feeling what you felt at the time. You can also be aware of any internal images, sounds, feelings as you relive this experience. Now, since you didn't consciously decide to have this response, it's as if some unconscious part of you generated this. So you can begin to sense in your body or around you, where do you sense this part lives? And as you sense this, you can just gesture to where in your body or around you, you sense this part of you. And if you're not sure, you can again just ask on the inside. Just notice, where do you sense this part? Or another way of putting this question is just noticing this response that you want to change, where is it generated from? Find this location. And thank this part for being here. Because you can trust that this part of you has something really positive it wants, even if you have no idea consciously what it is. And once you thank this part for being here, you can ask this part, what do you want? And then relax, turn inward, and just notice the first response that comes back from this part of yourself. This response may be in an image, sound, feeling. And you can just nod when you have the first response back from this part of yourself. And many of you already have responses, and for those of you who don't yet, you can again just ask this part, what do you want? And feel free to just go with the first thing that comes in your experience, even if you're not sure. Or you can even feel free to just make up the answer for the purposes of this group-guided experience. And so now you can thank this part of you for this response. And invite this part of you to step into or breathe into what it's like to already have this, what it's like to step in and already have this first thing that it wants now. And as this part of you is experiencing this, stepping even more and more into what it's like to already have what it wants, you can ask this part, when you have this, what is it you want through having this that's even deeper still, even more core? And again, just notice the first response that comes back from this part of yourself. And thank this part for this response and invite it to step or breathe into what it's like to already have this the way it wants. And as this part is experiencing this even deeper experience that it wants, ask this part, when you have this, what is it you want through having this that's even deeper still, even more core? Again, you can just notice what response comes back from this part of you. For some of you, the answers may come more quickly. For some, it may take a few more moments. And just however the answers come, you can invite the part, thank it for the answer, and invite it to step into this, going even deeper into this next experience that it wants. And ask, when you have this, what is it you want through having this that's even deeper still, even more core? And sometimes there's a sense of when something's fully experienced, the next thing that's wanted just blossoms from it, and the part just steps in and experiences this deeper outcome. So I'll give a few moments or a minute or two for you to just continue at your own pace. For some of you, the part may access some state of being that is so deep that there's nothing else even deeper. And over the next few moments, you can, when you're ready, open your eyes, and however far or however far you got is great. Even if you're still just thanking the part and wondering where it is, that's fine. For this group guided experience, many people are able to get quite far in the process, and not everyone is. And there's ways, of course, to tailor this specifically so that it works for you as an individual. If for some reason you got stuck somewhere along the way. So I'd like to open this up for a little bit of just feedback on this group experience. And the first questions I'll ask is just to have a show of hands so you all can learn from each other's experience. So for how many of you were you able to find the location of the part? Okay, great. So everyone who has their video on. Wonderful. How many of you found it somewhere inside the body? Let's see a show of hands for that. Did anyone find it outside of the body somewhere? Okay, that is also possible, although it is more common that it's inside of the body. But it could be experienced outside, like a voice or an image outside somewhere. So how many of you got an answer from the part of the first thing that it wanted? Okay, so almost everyone, if not everyone. And for how many of those who got the first answer also got deeper answers of what it wanted through that was even deeper or even more important? Just see a show of hands. Did anyone get to a place that was so deep that there was like nothing more? It was the deepest. Did anyone get that far just in this time? Okay, wow, so already at least 4 of you. Great, wonderful. So it's pretty amazing, isn't it, how quickly we can get to these deep resources with this process. I think that group guided experience was maybe 5 minutes. I don't know, maybe it was even shorter. So any clapping? Yeah, it's quite profound. There's a one time my mother, who developed this process, by the way, I probably should have mentioned that at the beginning. Connie Ray Andreas developed this process. One time she was working with somebody and they got to this wonderful core state, transformed back through these outcomes, and the whole experience was different. And then they got really angry, and she goes, "Oh, that's interesting. That's not usually what happens at the end of this." So she asks, "What's happening?" And the person said, "You know, I spent the last 10 years going on retreats and meditating and with spiritual teachers, attempting to get to where I just got in the last hour with you." And so a lot of people have experiences like that with this. Paul.
Hi, guys. So at one point, I kind of looped back, which was kind of odd for me because one of the first answers I got was protection. And so I kept going. And then as I kept going deeper, the answer came back as safety, which was just a different way of saying protection. So it was like, wait a minute, I've been here before. So that was a little confusing to me.
So one thing that may be true, and you could check with your experience, is sometimes things that sound the same in words, like consciously we might think that protection and safety is basically the same thing. And so often for the part, the safety that came later is a deeper experience or is somehow different. So that may be something that you could just notice, because often it will go from protection to safety, and it's like, it may be like a subtle shift, but that it is something that's wanted at an even deeper level. So I think you were on track with that, and with this part of you. One metaphor is that, you know, if I'm trying to get across a room, I can do that in a few big steps or in more smaller steps. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes our inner parts get there in some smaller steps, more gradual steps, and other times it's larger steps. And there's no right way to do it. It just is however it is. Yeah. Okay, just raise your hand physically if you would like to volunteer to be a demo. Okay, so thank you for volunteering. So you have a feeling, behavior, thought you would like to change. And what is that in a sentence or phrase?
I get very mildly irritated when I arrive at my kitchen sink, and once again, someone who lives with me, my husband, has left crumbs in the sink to get all dried on the sink and then have to be scrubbed out instead of just rinsing them right away where it's really easy.
Got it. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to one side or the other of this. So close your eyes and take a moment to just think of the different times and places where this has occurred. And then think of a specific time when this occurred. And mentally step back into this memory now. So it's like you're back in it as it was when it happened. Seeing through your eyes, hearing through your ears, feeling what you felt at the time. This mild irritation. And since you didn't consciously decide to be irritated, we know that some unconscious part of you is generating this experience. So you can begin to sense this part of you in your body or around you. Just notice, where do you sense this part lives?
Solar plexus.
Great. And thank this part for being here in the solar plexus, because you can trust that it has something really positive that it wants for you. And now, once you've thanked this part, ask this part, what do you want?
I want my efforts to not be taken for granted.
Okay, great. So thank this part for this response. And invite this part of you to step or breathe into what it's like to already not have your efforts taken for granted, just the way it wants. That's right. And as this part of you is experiencing this, you can ask this part, when you have this, what is it you want through having this that's even deeper still, even more core? Just notice what response comes back.
I want to be valued.
Great. So thank this part of you for this response of being valued. And invite this part of you to step or breathe into what it's like to already be valued now the way it wants. Yeah, and ask, when you are valued, what do you want through being valued that's even deeper still?
It's that very deep sense of being okay, of being good enough, that I matter, all those things.
So thank this part for this response, this deep sense of being okay. And invite this part of you to step or breathe into what it's like to already have this deep sense of being okay, that you matter. And just nod when this part of you is experiencing what it's like to already be okay, the way it wants, to already matter in this deep sense.
Truly, this is where it gets a little tricky.
Yeah,
It's,
I'm noticing.
yeah.
So tell me what's happening in your experience.
The part that I was communicating with so completely a moment ago,
Yeah.
it feels like it's kind of set off to one side, and now there's this disconnect.
Okay. Yeah.
There's only like a small percentage of it.
Okay, got it. So thank you for sharing your experience. And basically what's happening here is that there's another part coming in. Because there's this part that we had been communicating with so deeply, and now there's something else happening, right? So again, anytime something happens in our experience like this, we know, okay, there's some unconscious part of you generating this disconnect right now. So since you didn't consciously decide to disconnect, there's some part of you generating this, and you can just notice, where do you sense this part of you?
Now, that would be an image of my little girl with her hands on her hips.
Okay, great. So take a moment to just thank this part of you for being here as well. This little girl with her hands on her hips. Because you can trust that she also has something really positive that she wants. Yeah. And once you've thanked her for being here as well, you can ask her, what do you want?
There's some very old woundedness around that topic of not
Yeah.
showing up, not being noticed when I was little, being ignored.
Okay, yeah. So thank this part of you for letting you know about this woundedness from being little. And when you acknowledge this part and what it's sharing with you, you can just again ask this part of you, what do you, this part of me, want?
I want to be appreciated.
Okay, great. So thank this part for this response, to be appreciated. And invite this part of you to step into what it's like to already be appreciated the way she wants. Yeah, great. And ask her, when you are appreciated, what is it you want through being appreciated that's even deeper still?
To be re-energized or to have energy, not the answer I would have expected.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Thank this part of you for this response and invite her to step into what it's like to have energy the way she wants. Yeah,
Wow.
awesome. And ask her, when you have energy, what is it you want through having this that's even deeper still, even more core?
Joy.
Thank her for this response and ask her or invite her to step into having joy now And ask her, when you have joy, what is it you want through having joy, if anything, that's even deeper still?
Equanimity, even when there are crumbs in the sink.
Oh, wow. So thank her for this response of equanimity and invite her to step or breathe into what it's like to already have equanimity fully and completely now.
Wow, it just feels so cohesive, integrated.
And ask her, when you have equanimity, is there anything you want through this that's even deeper still?
Serenity.
Oh, thank her for this response. And invite her to step or breathe into what it's like to have serenity now.
It feels, in a very internal and quiet way, it feels very powerful.
Great. And so ask this part, when you have serenity, is there anything you want through serenity that's even deeper still?
It comes back to the certainty that I'm okay exactly the way I am. Not okay that I'm doing a really good job of being exactly who I am. It's beyond okay. It's about full self-acceptance.
Oh, wonderful. So check with this part. It sounds like this full self-acceptance is like a natural result of having serenity. But check with this part. Is the full self-acceptance like a natural result of serenity, or is it something that's wanted at an even deeper level?
I feel like we're on, it may all be on the same level, but what came is that being in a place of serenity, I can tolerate and accept the world as it is without becoming so upset, enraged, even about the status of the planet, the nature of American politics, yada,
Mm,
yada, yada, that I
yeah,
can stay on my center despite whatever comes.
great. So thank this part of you for sharing all of this in your own, in its experience and for you. And so this serenity, it sounds to me like is the core state for this part of you. This was what it wants at the deepest level. Okay, great.
So I think so, yes.
And this acceptance that you're describing is like this natural result of serenity, which is wonderful. And so we have some really good news for this part of you. And that is that often our inner parts think that they need to first do certain things or get certain things before they can experience their core states, such as serenity. And the good news is that actually the best way to experience serenity is just to step in and have it. So you can invite this part of you to step in and just notice, when I already have serenity, how does this make things different in general? And you can just, you've already stated some for the group, so you can just notice, this part of you can notice the experience of how things just change as a natural result of already having serenity as a way of being. And ordinarily, I may take a little bit more time with phase 2, but I would like to just guide it in a kind of more fluid, hypnotic way in the next couple minutes, just so that the group can have a sense of the next phase, which is in your handouts. And sometimes that's a really nice way to experience it as well. So I invite you to ask this part, now that you know you can just step in and have serenity, whether there are crumbs on the sink or not, whatever the life circumstance, you can ask this part, when you already have serenity, how does already having this radiate through, enrich, or transform this whole area of equanimity that's also important? And this part of you can just notice what it notices. And ordinarily, guiding someone, I would wait for a nod or a little feedback on this. We'll just continue. You can also ask this part, how does having serenity as a way of being enrich, radiate through this whole area of joy that's also important for this part of you? And yeah, you can take it in, notice, and also ask this part, how does having serenity radiate through, enrich, transform having energy? How does it enrich and support having energy? And how does it transform any situation in which you may not have energy in a particular time or particular way? And taking this in, and you can also ask this part, how does having serenity as a way of being enrich, radiate through this whole area of what was wanting to be appreciated? And how is it now?
Doesn't matter because it's already there.
Wow, isn't that interesting? Great. So you can invite this part of you to breathe in this experience. And now I think this is probably a good time to pause the demonstration. And I'll just say to the group, if we were to continue, then of course we would now go and reconnect with this part. So this may be something that you'd like to make a note of for yourself to guide yourself through on your own. And we just start where we left off. And this being okay, this may already be the core state for this part, or there may be something deeper. So we just find that out by asking in the process, is there anything even deeper, more core that this part wants? And get to the core state and bring that back through. So that's an example of working with multiple parts, which is way more than I thought we'd cover in this introductory time. So that's awesome. In this process, the lovely thing is there's no such thing as resistance. This is actually what's meant to happen. And so the process follows the person. We follow whatever additional parts arise and include them in the process. And thank you so much for volunteering as a demo and being a resource to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful work. I appreciate it.
You're so welcome. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please comment below with your experience of this process. And if you're interested in making this a daily practice for a time, feel free to use this video as a guide. You can choose anything mild that happened from the day, any feeling, behavior, thought, and use that as a starting point and use this video as a guide to your own experience each day.